for you. So just type away for me and I'll answer as many as I can. So what have we got? Here we go. Laura's just said type away questions. So I'll just wait for some questions to come through. Okay, here we go. So my daughter's 20 months old and from the last week has refused to have a daytime nap. She usually has 60 to 90 minutes. She slept for 12 hours a night since 14 weeks old. That's very good. And still does, but I feel she's too young to drop her nap as she gets so cranky during the afternoon. 20 months is quite young to be dropping a nap. It could be something developmentally going on, so just keep offering it. Depends what time are you offering the nap as well. So maybe just push it back half an hour and just see if that helps her take it. But if she doesn't take it, to stop overtiredness at night, just get her down early to bed, like 6 o'clock if necessary. But yeah, 20 months is quite young to be dropping the nap. It could be something that just keep on offering it and she'll probably start taking it again. Any more? Here we go. Some more questions. Okay, so a question from Facebook account. A lot of people ask this. So how do I help my baby not wake up during the night for a bottle? He's not actually hungry and he's just doing it out of habit and comfort. So what you need to do is, first of all, you need to establish whether it is hunger or comfort. You think it's, if I don't know what age your child is, but if it's just a comfort thing, you need to find an approach that you're happy with to use to settle her. And on top of that, what you could do is try and wean her off the feed, because if it's just a habitual thing, you need to get her used to not having it. So start reducing the amount of milk that you're giving her at that wake up. So just every few days do a few less ounces until you're down to like a couple of ounces, and then just get rid of it and use a settling approach to get her back to sleep. And then also Beck says, I'm looking for any advice on moving my 9-month-old son to his own room. He refuses to stay in the cot past midnight, but settles well when we first put him down every night. He ends up in our bed and none of us get any sleep. But the last week or so, he just fidgets and pulls out hair all night. We've been giving you and the sheep, and it works for his little cries, but he still wakes up wanting to be on our bed. Crying out hasn't worked, even when we regularly check on him and have white noise on. He just cries until he's sick or fills his nappy and we have to change him. I'm due back to work soon. It'd be a great time for him to settle in his own room. Okay, so 9 months, they can be aware of like separation anxiety, so crying out might not work for them. They might need more of an approach where you stay in the room, you make them comfortable with you there, and you gradually get out of the room. So you say he settles fine at bedtime. So bedtime, I would use the same approach though. So put him down and be in a position next to cot. So look up the gradual retreat approach. So every few nights you move further and further away. So when he wakes up in the night, don't get him out of the cot. Keep him in the cot and lie by the side of the bed, his cot, until he falls back to sleep. And you can give him some comfort from the side of the cot. Every time he stops crying, try and take your hand off, and just keep repeating this until he falls back to sleep. He knows you're there. So by doing that, he's comfortable, and then just get further and further away as you see, settling better and better until you're out the door. That's probably the best way to do it. The minute you start picking him up, then trying to put him back down, he's more of a tease. So try and just keep him in the cot and settle him from the side of the cot. It might take a couple of weeks, but it should work. It's just a new learning for him that he's got to stay inside the cot. A question here. I have an 8-month-old that has very bad reflux. It seems a lot better since changing her milk. So now I'm looking to start sleep training. How do I start? So how do you start? There's tons and tons of things you need to do. So first of all, you need to look at you need to get a good routine, solid routine in place. So when I say routine, you just want to aim for wake times of about 3 hours. So that's between each sleep, about 3 hours. But that morning one, between wake up and the first nap, might be less. That could be 2 hours, depending on each child. Roughly, you're looking at usually 2 naps. Sometimes they might need 3, depending on how much they sleep in their naps. And then you want to max for day sleep to about 3 hours. So that's kind of how the day should be shaped. And then in terms of settling approaches, there's tons of different ways to teach your child to sleep. Whether you want to use one where you leave the room in intervals, or you want to stay in the room and you comfort them, and you, as I said, that gradual retreat approach where you just move further and further away as they get comfortable settling in their own space. So that's how you start. And then just in terms of the environment, make sure the environment's really good for sleep. So make sure it's pitch black in the room, white noise if you want to use that, and just make sure that you're consistent as well, so that you respond the same way at bedtime, and have a really good bedtime routine. So that wind down routine should be half an hour long, and it should be the same every night, so that cues to their brain, it's sleep time. And exactly the same at nap times as well. Have that 10-minute wind down routine up in their nursery as well. So it's just all these little cues that it's sleep time, and it's the consistency and responding to them in the same way every time. So you just got to use an approach you're comfortable with, really. All of them work. It's just being consistent, and it's using the right one for you and your child. So what else here? My son has always been a terrible sleeper, and he's just turned 1. He's currently having at least 2 bottles of milk a night, along with a bottle of milk at bedtime. He almost never finishes the bottle and pulls away from it. And if I offer it again, he repeats his bottle away and refuses. I'm constantly exhausting him about saying, I get him to sleep better. I'm not asking to sleep through, just sleep better. So at 1, they have the capability, unless told by the doctor, that there's any sort of sleep issues and medical issues, they should be able to go through the night without a feed if they're feeding well in the day and eating well. So what you want to do is try and wean him off those bottles. So as I said earlier, try and reduce that milk. And if you think you could just settle him without using the milk by using a settling approach, do that until he goes back to sleep. It could be a few rough nights of doing it, but once they start learning to just put themselves back to sleep, then you're going to have much better night's sleep. But make sure when you put them to bed that you're not feeding them to sleep if you're wanting their sleep to improve. Because at 1, he needs to learn to put himself to sleep, so that if he wakes up in the night, he has the ability, without crying out for you or the bottle, to put himself back to sleep. So that's using a sleep training approach to settle himself. So whether you use a gradual retreat or you use a checks method where you go in at intervals, that's totally fine. If you need any extra help, just drop me a message if you need help doing that. The question here, early waking. So I think right now, I don't know if it's because everyone's stuck at home, early waking seems to be a big issue. So early waking, 16-month-old up at 5 a.m. every morning. What you want to check is that their bedtime, that they're not overtired when they go to bed. So, because if they go to bed overtired, they're more likely to wake up earlier in the morning. So a lot of people will think, I'll put my kid down at 8, 9 o'clock, hoping that then they'll sleep in later. Opposite will happen. All they're going to do is have less sleep in the night and probably wake up at 5 a.m. anyway. So get them down early. So if you wanted 6:30, 7 o'clock if necessary, depending on how much sleep they've had in the day. And if it's at the exact same time every morning, so let's say 5 a.m. every morning, what you could do is use the wake to sleep approach. So this is where you set your alarm. I know it's painful for just a few days, but it's worth it. 10 minutes before their normal wake up. So set your alarm for 4:50. Go into their room and gently rouse them. So you're not fully waking them up, but you're kind of just bringing them out of that cycle, so that then the idea is that they go over until they re-enter sleep and go into a new cycle. And so you do this for a few days to see if that resets their cycle. So that works really well for early wake-ups. If they're waking up at the exact same time, it has to be that they're waking up and it's a habitual wake-up, so that you're resetting their sleep cycles. So that should hopefully help for the 5 a.m. wake up. But just double check, they're not having too much sleep in the day, but also that they're not overtired at night. So it's a real balance. So without knowing the schedule, I can't give you exact specifics. My 8-week-old daughter is great at going into her Moses basket at bedtime and usually goes straight to sleep. However, once she wakes for her first feed at 2:30, She refuses to go back down, be unsettled for the majority. Is there anything I can do to help settle her back down? So 8 weeks old, you could use a really gentle way of getting it. So once she's had her feed and you know it's not hunger, and you know that she's not in any sort of discomfort, then the really nice method of shush patting is really good. So you can put her on her side and you can just gently pat her bottom until she goes back to sleep, and you use a real loud shushing noise. So it recreates that noise that's in the womb. And that should really help to settle her back down again. And use white noise if you want to as well. So hopefully that helps there. I have a 6-week-old daughter, and I'm not sure when I need to start aiming to get into a sleep and feed routine. I'm breastfeeding, so should I just continue to respond as when she needs it? So at 6 weeks old, she's still so diddly. Yeah, respond. Don't start trying to withdraw feeds and withhold feeds at 6 weeks old. Just make sure that you respond and give her feed. But at that age, it's quite a good. It's all just practice at this age, because you can't start sleep training. But just try and put her down drowsy but awake. So it's that kind of in between the two, and that starts the practice of putting down. And you can just slowly put her down a little bit more awake and settle her from the side of the cot. But yeah, just work. Don't not give her a feed at 6 weeks old. If she's hungry, then feed her, absolutely. But yeah, just try and keep her drowsy but awake, and put her down in the cot, and using a settle approach like that shush pat method to settle her. We've always had a bedtime routine, and my little boy, who's almost 3, is always in bed by 7. Sometimes he isn't asleep for a while, but always falls asleep on his own. He used to sleep in until 7, but recently he'd be getting up at around 5 a.m. We've tried skipping a nap during the day and putting him to bed later, but neither helped him to sleep later in the morning, and now I'm a zombie mum. What could help him to sleep in later in the morning? So 7 o'clock, if he's not taking his nap, if you're now saying you are getting rid of that nap, first of all, before getting rid of it, I would just try reducing it. So it doesn't say how long you're giving him, but I would say try and reduce it and see what that does. And if you need to, often they're waking up early because they're overtired. So give him an earlier bedtime, and that will usually, so cut it down to an hour's nap and give him an earlier bedtime, so 6:30 bedtime, and see if that then means he sleeps in later as well. But yeah, I wouldn't try and skip the nap and also give him a later bedtime. You want to do one or the other. But I would first of all keep giving him the nap for another week or so. If it doesn't help, then you could get rid of it, and then give him an early bedtime. How can I get my 7-week-old son to nap independently? Also, he grunts a lot in the night. I think it's just when there's a lot of pumps seem to come afterwards. Any tips on the grunting? It's stopping me sleeping even though he's sleeping. Thanks. Okay, so grunting, they're just noisy. I always used to say my son sounds like a farm animal. Yeah, so you just make a lot of noise, white noise in the room to try and drown out so you could get your sleep. How can you get him sleeping? He's 7-week-old independently. It's very young to get him to sleep independently. It's all just practice at this age. So as I said, using those methods, so you can use that shush pat method, but it's up to you whether you want to just put him down awake. At this age, it's all just practice. But yeah, grunting, not much you can do. They will just grow out of it. It's just they're really young and they make noises while they sleep, but it's good he's sleeping. But don't put pressure on yourself for a 7 weeks old to sleep independently. They don't really have the capability at that age to just, don't have unrealistic expectations that they're just going to put themselves to sleep. They need your help at this age. I have decided to stop co-sleeping with my 2-year-old son. However, he is so used to me being near to him. If he feels for me in his sleep, and if I'm not there, he wakes up. Is there anything I can do to prevent this? Yes, as I said earlier, a really nice approach is using that gradual retreat. So put him in his own sleeping space and be there that first night. And whether you want to lie on the floor and pretend you're sleeping, and then just gradually, once he's asleep, do that. And if he wakes in the night, then go back to that spot and do the same until he's back to sleep. And he starts learning to be comfortable with putting himself to sleep in his own space without you right there, but you're still in the room. And then every few days, just move out. It might take about 10 days to a week, 2 weeks to get you out of the room. But then he'll be comfortable with it. Just make it really gradual, because he's been used to co-sleeping. It's quite a big change to him. So really gradual, and just you can just lie on the floor. You can offer some comfort occasionally if he gets really upset, but then just try and do less and less and less, and just get yourself out of the room. Here. My son is 22 months and still has a better bottle before bed. His routine is bath, book, bottle, cuddle, bed. I need to get rid of the bottle and do bath, milk in a cup, teeth, book, bed, or bed and book. What's the best way to change this? So the best way to change it is just to go for it. You'll get used to the new routine. I always tend to do the milk with my son, who's similar age. I tend to do a cup of milk, and then we then do bath, and then that's it out the way, and then do the rest of the routine. But the best way to change it, unfortunately, there's nothing gradual you can do about it. You've got to change it, and they'll just get used to the whole new routine. Here we go, next one. So my baby is almost 5 months. She sleeps well at night. Her naps are only 30 minutes at a time unless you hold her or lay her on you. This means she can only stay awake for 1 to 1.5 hours at a time as she gets overtired. How do I get her to nap longer and stay awake longer? Also, she wants to sleep and less rocked. So 5 months, perfect time to try and start teaching your little one to self-settle. So the reason she's only doing 30 minutes naps is you're rocking her to sleep. She goes through a sleep cycle, and then she can't move on to another one because she's needing you to assist her. So her naps will never be longer. She won't be able to extend the naps until she can do it herself. So it's all about putting her down awake so that she falls asleep herself, and then those naps will naturally extend as she gets the hang of independent sleeping. So what you want to do is use a settling approach that you're comfortable with. And you can really start really gradual if you want. You can start with just putting her down drowsy but awake, and then getting her more and more awake until she's fully awake and when you put her down, if she gets really upset about it. And in terms of her wake times, you want to aim for about 2 hour, 2 hour 15, with maximum amount of day sleep of about 3.5 hours. So that's how you should shape your day, and go by wake times and then a schedule will just naturally form. Yeah, it's just about teaching her to fall asleep on her own, and that's how you're going to see those naps lengthen. Often kids, by 6 months, they're about able to consolidate naps, and that's when you can see those long naps. A lot of kids I work with, 5 months, are absolutely able to do it, even some 4 months olds as well. So it's just working about on those independent sleep skills. My boy is 5, so past the nap, but he keeps getting up early still. 5 years old, yeah, probably past the nap. Bring his bedtime earlier. So I don't know what bedtime you're doing. Aim for 7 o'clock, because he could be really tired when he's going to bed. Also, if it's the same time every morning, then use that wake to sleep approach. And my bet is that it's overtiredness causing early wake ups. Question: my toddler is nearly 2.5 years old. She still needs our presence to go sleep on the loft and wait during the night to come into our bed. We can take her back through and spend several hours settling her back in her bed before she's back in our room again 5 minutes after we leave. She has also been waking early, anywhere from 5 a.m. How do we rectify this? A lot of 5 a.m. wake ups going on here. If you go onto my website, Snooze Tots, on the blog, I've got about a page all about early rising, an article about that. So have a little look at that if you want, for more information. So you need to, when you say that you're settling that, I'd need to know more detail about what you're doing to settle your toddler, because you need to be persistent. So you're saying after 5 minutes, you're getting her back into she's back in your room. So what you have to do is then take her back in. You need to be consistent. So you need to take her back into her bed and use a settling approach. So like that method I said, the gradual retreat, stay there until she falls asleep and then just move further and further out the room. But you need to be consistent, because the minute you're happy to get her back into the bed, she's not going to learn. So just keep returning her to her bed. And it might be painful at the beginning, but if you just remain consistent, she'll just learn that that's the new way of sleeping. For the last few weeks, my 9-month-old son has took to trying to climb out of every crib, cot, pram we put him in. He was originally in an ex-me crib, which he was brilliant in, sleeping from 8 till 6, until he started waking at night with him bouncing up and down with his head over the side. Clearly he had ground around it, so we decided to put him in the cot, but he just won't settle in there, plus he's jumping around and is banging his head quite a lot. Be honest, he's been sleeping in his pram since as it lies down flat, and he doesn't try to get out of it. But for all our sanity, we need to get him settled in cot. Can you advise the best? Okay, so 9 months old, he could be learning a new skill and he's loving just practicing. But what you need to do is remain consistent. Put him in his cot, and keep him in there. So make sure that you're saying that he's falling asleep in the pram, so he's getting quite dependent on settling in the pram. So we need to do naps and bedtime in the cot. 9 months old, his wake time should be about 3 to 3.5 hours to prevent overtiredness, because sometimes if you put him down at the wrong time, he's going to go crazy in the cot. So make sure you're working on wake times of about 3 to 3.5 hours, with maximum day sleep of about 3 hours. And when you put him into the cot, make sure you're using a settling approach that you're consistent with, whether that's those checks of going in and out if he's crying, or whether you're using a gradual retreat approach. Whatever you're comfortable using, just go for it. And you need to use it for naps and bedtime, and respond for both in the exact same way. Gosh, we've gone through. Any other questions, guys? Or anything I've answered but you want some more clarification on? No? Laura's just put a link to my article about early rising, so hopefully that is useful for you guys. If you want, I do one-to-ones, so if you need help, more of a one-to-one basis, then obviously just let me know. Just message me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. Oh, hold on, there's another question. Please help. I've started control crying with my 17-month-old son last night. Went in 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He took 1 hour and 10 to go to sleep, 8:30. He then woke at 4:30, and we took 1 hour to get him back to sleep, doing the same thing. He then slept to 7:15. If you're going to do controlled crying, that's absolutely fine. At the first night can be rough, but if you stick with it, it will get better and better. If that approach is working for you and your son. But I don't tend to recommend doing the longer and longer. I find if you use an amount of time, so let's say you're comfortable, let's say you're 5 minutes or 10 minutes leaving your child, then choose a time instead of it getting longer. Just choose a time. So let's say 10 minutes. So if you've been crying for 10 minutes, then go in, make it quick, go in, reassure them. If you need to touch them, but often when you're touching them, they get more upset by it. So go in, say your key phrase, and leave the room, and set your timer again if he's crying. And if there's any moments of quietness, then just reset that timer. And they will pick it up very quickly if you respond in the right way. It can be rough the first couple of nights, but it does get better, because it's probably the quickest method you're going to find. So good luck with that. But that's not a bad night if you just woke at 4:30. So hopefully tonight will be even better. So Help, my 17-month-old has never been a good sleeper and was breastfed to sleep until about 6 weeks ago. Now he is rocked to sleep for bedtime and naps. He refuses all sleep 90% of the time, and I physically have to keep him on my lap. He wakes at minimum twice after being put to bed at night, but can sometimes wake 5 to 6 times. All he wants is me, sometimes drinks water and just wants to be rocked. Won't accept my husband going in whatsoever. Sometimes he wakes in the middle of the night, is then wake for an hour. I'm a very tired mummy and need help. Okay, so 17-month-old, very capable of sleeping through the night, but just needs to learn to do it. The only way he's going to do it is if he puts himself to sleep at the beginning of the night. So use an approach, because he's quite attached, I'd use a method where you're in the room. So put him down in his cot, and you can give him comfort when he's crying, and then take your hand off when he stops crying, and then give him comfort the minute he starts crying again, and keep taking your hand off. Might be a long night the first night, but he will eventually go to sleep. And the reason you're taking your hand off when he stops crying is because you want him to put himself to sleep. So you do that when he goes to bed. May take over an hour the first night, but will get less. And then a night in the middle of the night, if he wakes, go and return to your position and do the exact same. So you settle him from the side of the cot when he's crying, take your hands off, and just keep repeating that process. I know you say he wakes 5 to 6 times. It will get less as he just learns, okay, I just put myself to sleep, because he'll just suddenly, especially because he's 17 months, it'll just click in his head. If not necessary, ideally you don't offer him water, because otherwise that's what he's just going to get in the habit of wanting water in the middle of the night. So if you can just try, if he's not necessary to give him water, then just try settling him from the side of the cot, and just go through that process. He knows you're there, you're comforting him, you're just taking your hands off when he's not crying. So that's rubbing his back, his chest, whatever you know your son best, so just whatever settles him. My son kicks his cot when he wakes up to the point we have to attend. Is it time for big boy bed? So Lucy, what age is your son? I think you messaged earlier. So with a big cot, to move into a bed, I would say try and not do it for 2.5 to 3 years old, just because they don't understand those imaginary boundaries of a bed. So you're just going to have a little wanderer in the middle of the night, because they just can't understand, a lot of them. They've got to stay in the bed. So you're just going to don't move them to try and stop sleep issues, because you're not going to resolve them by putting them in the bed. You're more likely to resolve them keeping them in their cot. Lower the cot as far as you can. And it's safer. It's just safer. You don't want a wandering child in the middle of the night. That's, oh yeah, so Lucy's 22 months. It's quite young. I would try and keep him in his cot, in a sleep sack ideally. Just that then he means he can't move around as much as well. But also he's probably using that to get you by making loads of noise and you're coming in. If he's not in any danger, just let him do what he's doing if he's not upset. But yeah, it's quite young, and I think you'll find that he just gets out of his bed if you move him into a big boy bed, and he'll be coming into your room. So I would advise keeping him in his cot for a little bit longer if you can. Then Sophie. Okay, so this is back to the controlled crying. Sophie, so you've asked whether I have to try to do it again for his nap this morning. He went strong for 1.5 hours and I couldn't take it anymore, so we cuddled him and he fell asleep within a minute. Yeah, it's all a learning process. If you don't think that that's the right approach for your child, then don't use it. Use something where you stay in the room and comfort him, like I've discussed a minute ago. I don't know if you were on there, where you comfort from the side of the cot until he calms down, and then you take your hand off and you just keep on going. If it's too much for you, that can work quite quickly as well. So if it's too distressing for you to hear cries, some it works beautifully with, some it doesn't, but you've got to persist if you're going to do it. And And the minute you start then cuddling him to sleep, all you're doing is teaching him to cry, to then a long period of time, to then get whatever the old way was. So all you're doing is teaching him to cry a lot. So if you're going to do it, you have to remain persistent. Often what I do is, if it's been an hour of trying to get them to sleep, I take them out of their room, 10, 15 minutes, into another room, calm them down, and then you go again. And often that second time round, you see that they fall asleep. That's what I would do. But it's up to you. If you need some help, just message me, and we can do something one-to-one if you need extra help. How to encourage self-soothing. Lots of different things. As I've said, lots of different methods you can use. Those the couple of methods I tend to use are in the room or out the room, depending on the child or the parent. Also, when they're a little bit older and they can have a comforter, it's quite a nice thing. But if they're not going to be relying on you, it's quite nice for them to have something that they can cuddle into. So before you give it to them, put it down your top so that it's got your scent on it, and they then use that instead of you, so that when they wake up in the night, they've got a comforter. But self-soothing is all about putting them down in their cot awake and teaching them to fall asleep on their own, whatever approach you use. There's just tons of different ways you can do it. So it's finding that right approach. If you start to control crying, should you do it at all times as naps and bedtimes? Yeah. If you're going to do sleep training, yes, try and do it for naps and bedtime, both. Because if you start doing it for one, not the other, you're just confusing them. So hold on, I've got to go to sleep in the cot one way on my own, and then suddenly she's helping me. So yeah, if you're going to do it, you commit and do both. Naps and bedtime. That's when you're going to see results. How can I get my twin boys at the age of 4 to sleep through the night? Oh, I love twins, working with twins. So one twin always wakes up just for me to be beside him. If I sleep with him, he will sleep all night long. So yeah, so that's just a case of using something where you're in the room. So I'd need to know more detail of how are they going to sleep at night? Are they going to sleep on their own without you there? Or are they needing support to get to sleep? Are you helping them to go to sleep? Are you feeding them to sleep? Are you rocking them to sleep? Because whatever you're doing at bedtime, they're probably going to want for you to do when they wake up in the middle of the night. Oh, that is all we've got time for. God, that went quickly. Any other questions? You can get in touch with me on my Instagram page, snooze_talks, or on Facebook, or through my website. If you need extra support, then obviously just get in touch that way. Yeah, it's been lovely, and I hope it has helped lots of you. So thank you. Bye.